So my ex-friend, who once labeled me a bad influence for choosing to be child-free, just had the audacity to ask me to take in his whole family, including 3 kids. Can you believe that, to start off, I'm not looking for validation on my choices here. I'm confident I made the right choice. This is just a total vent about this super emotional day, because if there's anyone who gets it, it's you all in the child-free space. The main point. A guy I used to be friends with, let's call him Dave, reached out to me after nearly 3 years of silence. He says there's a home emergency and he's looking for a place for himself, his wife and their 3 kids to stay while they sort things out. This is the same dude who, when I was dealing with something really tough, said he couldn't be my friend because I'd be a bad influence on his kids since he's child-free. Here's some context. The friendship ended because I was going through an incredibly tough time. My father was dying, and that was just one of the many awful things happening in my life. Over those 3 months I was seeking comfort, but instead Dave told me that being a CF woman made me a bad influence on his family. He had a wife and 2 kids, and ultimately they decided they didn't want to be around me because they felt I wasn't worth their time compared to their other friends. I had known this person since grad school, and we had a blast together doing things like rock climbing. Dave and I were part of a crew of friends who often booked lake houses or winter lodges for our summer and winter sports adventures. We're looking at over a decade, so he just decided to drop me because he figured I wasn't worth it. It was really painful, especially since I was going through some tough times myself. It hit harder knowing I supported him when he learned about his mom's cancer diagnosis and was there for him during her funeral. As I mentioned, it's been nearly 3 years since I last spoke or texted him. I figured it was just a thing that happens when people have kids, like they suddenly adopt this old-school conservative viewpoint where anyone not aiming for that perfect family setup is seen as questionable. So today, I get a text from Dave. I never deleted or blocked his number, so his name was still there in my contacts. And there it was right in front of me. So he reached out and asked if he and his 3 kids could crash at my place, since their water heater is on the fritz. It's a bit of an emergency, you know. He's aware that I'm now in the same city as him, and it would be a huge favor, definitely something he'd owe me for. Sure thing. Wow, that really hits you in the feels. So he said, I'm a bad influence, and now he and his wife have gone and had a 3rd kid. Looks like a little one from the pandemic era. Honestly, my main thought was, why me out of everyone? I was curious why Dave is putting this on me. His reply was pretty much that he's completely out of choices, and that nobody has the space for him, and the 3 kids, especially with the 5-month-old. I asked him why he can't just book a hotel room for them. He mentioned that it would cost a lot, and they're already drowning in medical debt from their latest child having to spend time in the NICU after birth. That definitely sounds rough. But once again, why is it always me? He mentioned that he's aware I assisted someone with emergency housing last year and noticed I had some extra space for guests. Given how generous I was in the past, I feel it's only right to extend that generosity to him now. I totally got what he was saying, but I was super curious about the how behind it all. That situation was pretty sensitive, and I figured it was more of a private family issue. He mentioned that the couple I assisted shared it on Facebook. So just a quick side note, around this time last year, one of my close college friends, Kate, who has lupus, ended up getting COVID-19. She was really trying to be cautious. You know, it was really frustrating since this happened before the vaccines were available for those at higher risk. She's in her mid-30s, like me, and generally healthy, except for dealing with lupus. Believe it or not, she's a marathon runner. Kate's lupus really complicated her battle with COVID, and she found herself in the ICU. On top of that, she was pregnant, and her husband faced the heartbreaking choice to prioritize her life over that of the fetus. It was a tough choice: provide life-saving treatment to Kate, potentially sacrificing her fetus, or risk her life. Luckily, he's a decent person and allowed the doctors and the pregnancy to help save her life. Kate's mother was incredibly harsh, suggesting that her daughter should have perished along with the baby. She claimed that Kate's life has lost its value and even attempted to involve a priest to administer last rites. At that moment, Kate was in a coma. This led to a massive dramatic fallout. As you can probably guess, Kate's brother and his wife were in desperate need of a place to crash far away from their toxic mother. I had a spare room available, and I'm conveniently located near the hospital. They crashed at my place for a couple of days, until they secured a room in one of those extended stay hotels. Everyone was on edge, uncertain if Kate would pull through, so it made sense for them to stick close by. They were out of state crashing with the awful mother while their sister was in the hospital. It's a relief that Kate managed to escape and has cut ties with her mother since then. She actually recalls during the coma hearing, people discussed the priest attempting to get inside. I welcomed my brother and his wife into my home because they are genuinely good people. They've always been supportive and remain some of the most gracious individuals I know. So it turns out that I missed something because I'm not on Facebook. Apparently, either Kate's brother or his wife shared a post about how I was there for them during a tough time, calling me a decent person and a light in their dark moments. They straight up said it to me. I had no idea they put that out there on social media. So here we are today. Dave noticed that stuff last year, stored it away in his mind, and assumed I would just welcome his family and kids into my home without a second thought. Honestly, I just told him where to stick it. I was really annoyed that he was trying to pressure me into letting him and his family stay at my place for who knows how long. He knows I'm child-free, and he even mentioned that my choice is a bad influence on his family. But then out of nowhere it becomes convenient for him. It's like I'm suddenly the perfect person, and he thinks he can just stroll back into my life without even acknowledging the hurtful things he said 3 years ago. I explained that being child-free means I prefer not to have kids around for long stretches. If I did, I wouldn't be living the child-free life. I'm not about to turn my home and my 2 cats into a bed and breakfast for his 3 kids. He called me selfish and told me to consider his kids, mentioning that there's no hot water in his house. I told him to deal with it, that he could either pull out a credit card or ask one of his family members to pay for a hotel room. He just kept throwing out excuses, mentioned their medical debt once more, and insisted it would only be for a few days. I mentioned that having to wait several days for a broken hot water heater seems really questionable. Issues like that can be resolved pretty fast. I'm familiar with the residency laws in our state, and if someone spends 7 days in another person's home, they can assert tenants' rights. I wasn't going to let this become a situation where I couldn't shake them off. He went off on me and then threatened to expose me on social media, and to all my friends, claiming that I wouldn't help a family of 3 in an emergency and that I want little kids to suffer. Told him to take a hike and get lost. It's been ages since he was actually a friend. He has no clue where I live. He only knows that I'm in the same city and that I'm flying solo. He can go off on social media as much as he likes. I'm not on Facebook, so I really couldn't care less about what those judgmental types think of me. I told him that social media doesn't reflect reality. If he really goes and tells my real friends, they'd totally just laugh at him. I let him know I have all his messages saved as evidence of how he talked to me and how much of a jerk he is. I reminded him that he was once a good person, that we shared many great moments, and that I still feel bad about what happened with his mom. It's unfortunate that he chose this direction in life. He must be feeling pretty miserable. He's just not the kind of person I need in my life right now, so I have to keep my distance. I'm pretty sure he'll get it, especially since he mentioned something similar about me that pretty much sums up what I mentioned last. He kept going until I finally blocked him. I'm feeling pretty down about it. He was genuinely a good person a decade ago, and his mom was such a wonderful woman. I'm preparing myself for the inevitable onslaught of flying monkeys who might emerge and attempt to guilt-trip me into taking in his family. So excited to suggest they handle his family on their own. I already shared the whole situation with my two best friends, and they were both totally taken aback by how bold and shameless Dave was. People found it pretty odd that he was so insistent on coming into my place, and it went on for days. A friend mentioned that her water heater broke recently, and she managed to get a plumber to come out the same day. It got sorted out in just a day. Opposing the hotel concept raised some eyebrows for them. They want to know the full scoop. I totally get that it seems like there's something off about it. I definitely feel a sense of justice regarding all of this. I'm confident I made the right choice. It really sucks when something nice you did gets thrown back in your face. A while back, I considered that he might have a valid perspective, thinking I wasn't good enough because I was dealing with some serious depression. It's like nobody wants to be around someone who's down all the time. Looking back, it's clear to me that his character was deeply flawed. However, it did bring back some old memories, and they weren't exactly happy ones. Thanks for sticking around and reading this to the end. I just need to share this and let it out. So here's the latest Dave, who used to be a friend, and once labeled me a bad influence on his family, is now asking me to take care of his family at my place. Honestly, I'm feeling pretty good and a bit taken aback that everything has sorted itself out in just over a day. Looks like having folks working for you in the background really pays off. Just wanted to give a shout out to everyone who participated in the last post. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate the support and knew you'd get where I'm coming from with my venting RIP to the inbox, but I managed to read everything, and you all are the best community out there. No trolls in sight. I think this could be something truly miraculous. All right, here's the latest update. I'm sipping on a steaming cup of tea while I write this, and I think you should totally give it a try. 2. Brace yourselves, this one's going to be a lengthy read. Oh, look at that. Your instincts were spot on. A family of 5 needing alternative housing due to a broken water heater seemed a bit suspicious, especially considering that Dave doesn't even have a water heater. Everything was just a facade. All right, I can already hear the chorus of, "I told you so let me break it down for you." Dave sold his house 6 months ago, and he and his wife Shelley have been on the hunt for a bigger home ever since. As I'm writing this, they're currently at a hotel with their kids. They've got more than enough hot water. I can totally picture everyone here just nodding along saying, "Yep, yep, yep, yep." I figured you all were curious for an update since the water heater excuse seemed pretty sketchy. All right, listen up. You really need to grab yourself some tea. My sister is in a different time zone and is a few hours ahead of me. It seems she's been digging into Dave's past. Her husband once had a side gig as a pie during grad school, and she has this uncanny knack for uncovering details about others. She's a bit of a weirdo, but in a charming way, she definitely has a social media presence, while I'm just not there at all. I shared with her Dave's complete real name, along with some details I had, such as an address and the names of his wife and their 2 kids. She headed into town. She mentioned that his place hit the market around 6 months back and sold really fast for a lot more than the price it was purchased for years ago. It's definitely a seller's market right now, and that sale was massive. I was just thinking, wow, that's really fascinating. She went on to say that she checked out the city and nearby towns, but couldn't spot him purchasing any other properties. It seems like his house went for $1, but that's all there is to it. I shot a message to my 2 friends from yesterday. I shared what my sister discovered. It seems like Dave sold his house and doesn't really have a water heater issue, since he doesn't even have a water heater. My friends were totally confused, so one of my 2 friends, Allison, reached out to my sister, and they totally went down a rabbit hole on social media. My sister was super concerned that I was getting scammed, Allison was a grad school buddy of mine and Dave's over a decade ago. She didn't really have a close relationship with him, and he wasn't someone she thought about much, but she was still one of his Facebook friends, I suppose. We should give a shout out to those folks on Facebook who are adding just about everyone they have a passing acquaintance with. I got a response from Kate's brother and sister-in-law around the same time they had stayed with me while Kate was in the hospital. It was Kate's sister Laura who shared a post expressing gratitude for my generosity on Facebook. She said she had shared a few pictures. It was a snapshot of my cat striking a pose as if she were the queen of the house alongside my impressive Monstera Deliciosa, which she adored. You could totally read into the vibe of the place, especially with a spacious kitchen and a nice pantry that suggests someone takes pride in keeping things organized. This is going to matter. I brought her up to speed on the situation, and she was totally shocked that she could have played a role in why Dave was trying to get into my place. She removed the post, untagging me, and sent me a screenshot as proof. Then she asked if there was anything else she could assist with. I mentioned that my sister is apparently going down a rabbit hole and might need some assistance. I connected Laura with my sister, so it looks like Laura reached out to Allison too. Out of the blue, and kind of late in the morning, Allison hit me up for some screen grabs of the exact moment in the text chat where Dave mentions his emergency is about the water heater. He needs me to do him a solid and take care of his family and kids for a few days. I handed it over, and then it was just crickets for the majority of the day. I was like, I'm curious about what's happening here. So in the early evening, I end up getting a lot more of the story. I received messages from my sister, Allison, and Laura. I'll break it down into bullet points. It's kind of a roundabout way to get there. So Dave and Shelley totally sold their house. About 6 months back, they were looking for extra space and additional bedrooms for their 3 kids, aiming to make an upgrade. In this crazy seller's market, their home has racked up a hefty 6 figures in equity since they purchased it. They were totally stoked to list it for sale. Dave and his wife aimed to maximize their profit from the house sale, so they decided to sell it without any contingencies, requiring them to purchase a new home before the buyer could officially take possession. Dave was totally sure that with the massive sale they just had, they could snag another one in no time. Their house flew off the market, sparking a bidding frenzy. Dave wouldn't stop talking about it. He and Shelley set out on their quest to purchase another home. Actually, it was pretty tough. Every house they tried to bid on ended up going to someone else who offered more. The moment arrived for the new owners to step in, and it was time for them to pack up and leave. Dave and Shelley were pretty chill about the whole situation, not seeing it as a major issue. A friend took them in, but it was clear from the start that it was just a temporary arrangement while they looked for a house to buy. What Dave and Shelley were up to. Yet they continued to get outbid. They were totally unwilling to compromise on their expectations or tweak their budget. They totally ignored homes that were the same size as their old one, since the main goal of selling was to upgrade to something bigger. They just kept losing out in every bidding war. Dave was totally against bumping up the budget. For sure, their 3rd child arrived early and spent time in the NICU, so they really do have medical bills to deal with. He's not interested in shelling out any more cash or taking on additional loans, so Dave, Shelley, and the 3 kids are crashing at someone else's place. They keep searching for homes, but just can't seem to find one. This is happening again at someone else's place. Right now, folks are suggesting that it might be wise to hold off on buying until the housing bubble settles down, and in the meantime, consider renting an apartment. Dave dismisses this idea since an apartment comes with expenses similar to a mortgage. If he's going to cover living expenses each month, it better be for a mortgage. He believes that shelling out cash for an apartment is just throwing money down the drain. Shelley is absolutely furious at the idea. She's not interested in moving to a place that's going to be smaller than where they used to live. It feels like Dave's family is really pushing the limits of hospitality. Folks are starting to feel frustrated. Dave and Shelley are totally not down to help out with groceries. Dave's family has now landed in 4th place among those willing to take them in. A month ago was when they exhausted all their options for free housing. It's pretty funny how they all got kicked out because everyone needed the space for their own family. Visiting for the holidays, people are really fed up with the freeloaders these days. Shelley works as a teacher in the city, and with the kids back in school, it's essential for them to remain in the city. So their only alternatives for free housing at this point are Dave's brother, who is a couple of hours away, and Shelley's parents, who are 6 hours away. Both choices are pretty rough for Dave and Shelley's jobs, and their kids attending in-person classes, so Dave and his family were in a tight spot and had to secure a hotel right away. They're super frustrated because their kids are being noisy and the hotel staff keeps nagging them to keep it down. Dave and Shelley are totally venting about how much they despise living out of a hotel. It's just so frustrating that despite having all that money, they still can't secure a house. Just to clarify, they definitely have plenty of cash to manage living in a hotel, which is still way more expensive than renting an apartment. Dave is totally on board with the hotel concept. Since there's no lease to sign, they can bounce whenever they want, and the service is solid. Shelley goes all in. Woe is me. She mentioned that the kids are really bummed out about not having a backyard to hang out in. Staying in a hotel really puts a damper on the kids' freedom. Children. Just a quick detour, Allison digs through Shelley's posts and uncovers a moment where she and a group of her friends are chatting unkindly about me. So this thing went down right at the beginning of the pandemic. It was that time when everyone totally lost it and began hoarding all the toilet paper. Folks went on a buying spree for food items before they could be restocked, all thanks to that panic buying frenzy. A former grad school buddy reached out to check in on me and see how I'm doing. I really believed she was reaching out to lend a hand and show some kindness. She was just trying to convince me to share my food with her. I've been rocking a chest freezer and a wall-stocked pantry for ages now. Having a functional pantry is a tradition I inherited from my Oma, my grandma, who lived through W1. My mum did it, so now I'm doing it too. So this friend, who appeared to be really nice to me, is aware that I have a good stash of food. She mentioned that I should share some of my food since I don't have any kids to take care of. She mentioned that her kid is super selective about food, and I might have some extra frozen chicken lying around. I was taken aback by her boldness and suggested that if she was really in need of food, she could check out a food bank. I'm not about to hand over my food just because her kid is picky and only wants her homemade chicken nuggets. What we're seeing isn't a food shortage, it's just people freaking out and buying everything in sight. If she heads to the grocery store early in the morning during the week, when they usually restock, she'll have no trouble finding chicken. She said I'm being selfish, so it seems she decided to air her grievances online, chatting behind my back with other spouses of grad school friends. Returning to the Shelley discussions, Shelley is backing the lady who attempted to convince me to hand over my frozen chicken. Shelley thinks I'm being selfish for not lending a hand to a mom in need. She thinks it's pretty strange that I have so much food stocked up for just myself, implying that I must have some issues. If you think that's the case, then you must believe that Dave's wife had a hand in planting that idea. Absolutely, you're spot on when Laura shared about my kindness in letting them stay for a few days, while they sorted out a long-term hotel situation during Kate's hospital stay. Shelley made some really nice comments about how thoughtful it was of me to do that super sweet, and she said, "My home looked amazing. This network of friendships might seem intricate, but at its core, it's just a bunch of folks who met during grad school. Grad school was a grind, and we all needed a break. so we plan trips before settling down with spouses or kids. I used to gather my close college buddies, the ones who stuck around in the state, for our group trips. We'd all chip in to rent lake houses or cabins at ski resorts for some good times together. Once more, recent posts of Shelley going all out. Woe is me, she mentioned that the kids are really bummed out about not having a backyard to hang out in. Staying in a hotel really puts a damper on letting the kids just be themselves. So there's this odd post from Shelley a couple of days back, and it seems like her family has discovered this adorable spot where her kids can finally escape the whole hotel scenario. She mentioned that the kitchen is awesome for her kids. So out of the blue, Dave texts me yesterday, after 3 years of silence, saying his water heater is broken and asking if I can take in his family for a few days while it gets sorted out. Clearly, I made it known that my answer was no. Oh, look at that. So my friends noticed that Dave and Shelley were throwing some shade on social media this morning, complaining about how awful society is these days, especially when friends back out of helping families with kids in tough situations. Shelley mentioned that her adorable living arrangement didn't work out. She totally rakes in the sympathy from her crew of Karens. She mentioned that her kids are really bummed out. I guess this is around the time Allison requested my screen grabs of Dave's water heater saga. Allison goes on a rampage and shares the screenshots of Dave's water heater deception. She and Laura begin to call them out. It turns out that Dave and Shelley didn't actually have a new place to move into. They were attempting to gain access to my house by fabricating a story about a broken water heater. I never said they could crash at my place. Laura totally ripped into them. For being massive jerks and trying to exploit me, Allison totally lost it over that situation from 3 years back. My true friends like Allison really supported me, while others like Dave just shrugged it off and said I was a bad influence on his family. Allison shared the news about Dave, labeling me a bad influence on his family because of my child-free choices. It's pretty sad that he thinks he can just waltz back into someone's life after throwing insults around. Allison is child-free as well. Folks called out Dave for being really harsh and then expecting favors. It seems to have escalated into folks labeling him as incredibly stingy and a freeloader. The folks who took his family in over the past 6 months suddenly showed up to criticize him. Someone shared their thoughts on how messy Dave's family was, mentioning the ridiculous amount of extra cleaning they had to tackle, that his kids were totally lacking in manners. They instilled fear in their dogs. It was epic when they finally bounced. Folks were really upset that they were attempting to pull a fast one on me, and then turned around to paint me as the villain online. Some folks I hadn't connected with in ages shared with him that I was a decent person, how I lent a hand during grad school for various things, and that I really didn't deserve this situation. That's awesome to hear. I've shared stories about how I've helped people land jobs, which is definitely more than what Dave has accomplished. I'm super active in the grad school networking scene, and I love sharing job leads and insights on landing scientific positions and mentoring others. Even Dave's brother expressed his disgust over this behavior. He recalled the support I provided during the tough time after their mom's passing. He mentioned that their mom would be turning in her grave if she saw the way he was treating others. My sister managed to convince me to hop on a Zoom call, and she shared her screen to give me a look at all the excitement. Perhaps this explains why I never received a single message from anyone regarding not allowing a family into my home. I thought there would be flying monkeys. I never received them. Wow, the satisfaction is unreal. So Dave was all set to call me out on Facebook. But guess what? He ended up getting called out instead. And that's just ridiculous. This is just so unbelievably foolish. I had the messages of him totally lying about the freaking water heater. He probably figured that because I wasn't on social media, I wouldn't be able to expose his lie about the water heater, or realize that he was currently basking in the luxury of hot hotel water I feel like I just narrowly escaped a catastrophic disaster. After work, I found myself needing a drink to process everything that's been going on. After giving it some thought and weighing all the details, I felt like Dave and Shelley were planning to squat in my place. He really lost it when I brought up the 7-day rule regarding tenant rights. In our state, I had a feeling something was off. Everyone saw it coming, huh? I get the feeling he was just trying to save a buck and didn't want to shell out for a nicer hotel. He was still not interested in searching for an apartment. He had tapped out all the free housing options with friends in the city. I was a final attempt. His wife kind of knew I was open to having guests over. She was aware that my place was pretty nice and that I had plenty of food for her kids to munch on. They were already known for devouring everything in sight, leaving nothing behind. If they crashed at my place for a week, they'd basically be squatters, and I'd end up having to deal with the hassle of getting them to leave. Given the current state of the courts, it likely would have taken ages to get them out. It's way simpler to pull a fast one on an individual and force them out of their place than to attempt the same with their actual friends who are tied down with kids and limited space. He was just trying to find a place to stay for free so he could save every cent towards his dream of purchasing a bedroom house with the cash he made from selling his previous home. I'm not completely sure, but it seems logical. I figured I'd shoot him one final message. I unblocked him and shot him this message before blocking his number again. Hey Dave, I just discovered that you weren't being truthful about that water heater. Seriously, you don't even have a water heater. You're staying in a hotel while sitting on a massive stack of cash from selling your previous place? It's really messed up that you lied to me and tried to invade my space just to take advantage of me, especially after you ruined our friendship by calling me a bad influence on your family. I didn't mention it before, but I'm saying it now. You're garbage. Your mom would totally be disappointed in you. It's clear that this is all about you projecting your issues, as you're the one being a negative influence, not just in my life, but in the lives of others too. If you truly thought I was a negative influence, you wouldn't have attempted to bring your family over to my place this week. If you really believe I'm a negative influence, then don't expect any help or favors from me down the line. I'll make sure to keep my negative vibes away from your family. And it seems like Shelley has turned into quite the character. The final thing I can say to you, since I'm not heartless, is that you really ought to step up as a husband and father and make sure you secure a stable apartment for your family. Quit with the freeloading antics already. Check out this link to our local Craigslist housing page. I bet you'll find something good. Also, looking forward to seeing you at the next in-person alumni event. I'm really looking forward to catching up face to face. Well, that's it. I've said what I needed to say. Once again, you all nailed it. There was definitely more happening behind the scenes. I'm feeling really unwell right now. It's hard to believe someone could even think about doing this to me. The thought of letting them into my home makes me feel even more nauseous. That would have been a total disaster.